Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to talk about how to collect data or information. Data is a fancy way to say information, and how to show that information in a very visual way so you can clearly see what kind of information you got. So today we were working on that in our math Zoom class, and if you missed it, this video is for you. I already have all the information written down and all of the graphs filled out, so I can easily show you what we did in our math class today as far as collecting data and then showing the data on a graph. And again, a graph is a visual way to see information that you've collected. Today, the information we collected was how many children in our class have each number of pockets. And we went from 0 to 10 or more pockets. So we went through the number of pockets, and I asked all of the students in the class, I said, raise your hand if you are wearing 0 pockets today. If you have 0 pockets on your clothes or in your clothes, however you phrase it, raise your hand. Well, guess how many kids today in our math class had 0 pockets they were wearing? 3. 3 of them had 0 pockets. So what we did underneath where it says tallies is we drew 3 tally marks. And then we wrote the number 3. So we would know that 3 kids were wearing 0 pockets today. Then I asked everyone, how many of you have 1 pocket that you're wearing today? And only one student raised his or her hand. I can't remember if it was a his or a her hand. So one person, and we put the number 1 right there and 1 tally mark. Then I asked, okay, how many of you are wearing 2 pockets? Well, there were 3 students and 1 Miss Ostrowski, myself, that's wearing 2 pockets today. So there were 4 of us, and we put the number 4. Now I know the directions say how many children in your class, but I cheated a little bit and I included myself. All right. How many students were wearing 3 pockets? None of them were. So we put no tally marks and we put a 0 for the number. So for 4 pockets, there were 3 students wearing 4 pockets. So we put 3 tally marks and a 3. And then 5 pockets, there was 1 student wearing 5 pockets. So we put 1 tally mark and the number 1. So you'll notice that for the numbers 6 through 10 or more, that means how many people were wearing 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 or more pockets. Nobody was. So we put no tally marks and we put zeros. I'm very sorry about my sloppy writing here. It's very hard to write with a mouse and a virtual pen, but I'd like to think I'm getting a little bit better. So there's that. Okay, so once we collected the data, we were ready to fill in our graphs. And the first graph that we filled in was this picture graph. A picture graph is a graph that has pictures in it. That's why it's called a picture graph. And you'll notice that a graph just looks like a grid. It has a title, number of children with pockets, and the title tells you what kind of data or information the graph is showing. On the bottom, you'll see the label number of pockets. Since we were gathering data or information about pockets, the label down here says number of pockets, and here are the numbers 0 through 10 or more. And we drew pictures to show how many kids were wearing how many pockets. Now, what made us decide on a smiley face picture? Well, if you look at the key down here, it says that each smiley face equals 1 child. So this graph already had a key or a bit of information that told us that we have to use smiley faces in our picture graph, and each smiley face represents one child. Now, if you ever make your own picture graph, you can decide in your key what kind of pictures you want to draw and how many each picture represents. So in this key, one smiley face equals one child. So what we did was we simply looked at the data we collected on page 133 to fill out our picture graph. So I asked the students, how many of us were wearing zero pockets today? And if you look back at the data we collected with our tally marks, we figured out that 3 of us were wearing pockets. So on our picture graph, guess how many smiley faces we put? 3. Right here at 0, because 3 of us were wearing 0 pockets. It's the opposite of what I was going to say. 3 of us were wearing 0 pockets. How many of us were wearing 1 pocket? We saw on our data table that 1 of us were wearing 1 pocket. So on our picture graph, we put 1 smiley face. So we went back and forth between our data chart and the picture graph, and we just filled in the information from the tally marks that we collected. So since there were 4 children wearing 2 pockets, we drew 4 smiley faces. Nobody was wearing 3 pockets, so we left that blank. 3 children were wearing 4 pockets, and 1 was wearing 5 pockets. And then for the numbers 6 through 10 pockets or more, nobody was wearing 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 or more pockets, so we just left that blank. Now, once you filled in one graph, it's very easy to fill in another one. We went to this page and we filled in a bar graph, and it's called a bar graph because you're actually drawing bars to show your data instead of pictures. So we simply used our picture data to fill out our bar graph. And again, I apologize for how sloppy that looks. It is very hard to draw with a mouse. But I think you get the idea. We had 3 students wearing 0 pockets, like this pictograph shows. 3 students wearing 0 pockets. So we colored the squares until we had a bar that was 3 squares high. And we know we colored in 3 because if you match up where we stopped coloring to the number to the side, you have a 3. Now, this sort of explains why in a bar graph, there are also numbers on the side. There's not in a pictograph because you can easily count pictures, but you can't easily count squares. Once you've got them colored in, you can't really see the lines in between. So it's easier to have numbers here to show how many squares you filled in, and that represents the number of children. And it's important to put a label here too to tell what these numbers mean. So back to the filling in of the squares. We saw in our pictograph that 1 student was wearing 1 pocket, so we colored in 1 square. And if you look over here at the top of our coloring, you see the number 1 there. So that means 1 square. And we had, let's see, 4 students, 4 children wearing 2 pockets. 1, 2, 3, 4, so that matches. Nobody was wearing 3 pockets, so we left this part of the bar graph blank because no one was wearing 3 pockets. We had 3 students wearing 4 pockets, so we colored in the squares until we got to 3, which represents 3 students. And 1 student was wearing 5 pockets, so we colored in 1 square. Easy peasy, right? If you needed to pause this video to copy what we put on our graphs, that's okay. I hope you got it all in. If you didn't, just rewind and go back to the part where you need to fill in your own information on your pages. Also, I want you to make sure that you do page 136 here to practice your adding.